Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Yep, we're going to talk today. Grossi. And today we have on a very special guest, a gem, someone whose name has been echoing throughout the comments for the past few weeks. And he is either the bane of your existence or he is the heart of your eye. That's the wrong phrase. I don't even know what was the phrase I was going for. Don't know. But he is not only on the NFL Network, he is also the host and creator of the Adam Rank podcast, and that is Adam Rank. Adam, thanks so much for coming on, buddy.
What's happening? And that sound you hear is Packers fans around the world being like, nope, not listening to this idiot. We're gone.
Unsubscribe. Like immediately, like right away. We built this following and it just crumbles in a heartbeat. But I have to say, I came prepared, obviously, because this is where I do my thing. It looks like you very much came prepared as well.
Oh, 100%. You know, there's no way. You know, I have a whole collection of Bears hats behind me as well. Mine are a little bit neater, but whatever. Yours looks good too. Like, No. It's good. It's a good look for you. It's what we would expect from Wisconsin. Like, you are the relative that we have that you know that when you're going to their house, you're probably going to be sitting on a pile of magazines. So yours seems appropriate. Mine, tastefully adorned as a Bears fan, as somebody from the state of Illinois, from the city of Chicago. Well, not really this, the suburbs, Schaumburg. Well, which a lot of Chicago people will be like, that's not Chicago, but whatever. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No. It's not a problem. I'm used to it from you. So what we're talking about, you brought up a really, really good point, and I think that's a perfect transition because obviously, you were born in Chicago.
Yes.
Right? And, I want to take a second and acknowledge, obviously, the country's in crazy times. COVID is rampaging. But I did want to talk about something very, very important because you didn't live in Chicago your entire life. If I'm not mistaken, you moved to California.
Oh, yeah. My dad, Navy guy, and he's from a town in Illinois called Sterling, Illinois. That's probably actually closer to Davenport than it is Chicago. My mom is from Oswego. And so when my dad was done with all of his obligations, he's like, we're not living here anymore. We're getting out of the snow. Like a smart person. He's like, we're getting out of the snow. Interesting. First year, he's like, let's go to Atlanta. So we moved down there. We, of all places, Stone Mountain. Super proud to be, a former resident there.
Yeah.
And the first winter we were there, and I was a little kid, and this is more of a lore that I hear, is that there was an ice storm. And my dad's like, done. And we moved to California. Not only California, but like outside of Los Angeles to where it's more deserty. So there was no chance of there ever being snow ever. So, yeah. So I have that weird thing. So you see, like a lot of people will wonder, because like if you follow me on any sort of social media, you'll see me tweeting out Angel stuff. And they're like, what is happening here? What is going on? It's like, yeah, I grew up here. I grew up in the town outside of Anaheim. And so I'm an Angels fan, but I like the Bears. We didn't also have pro football out here in Southern California for a long time. So that's on you, NFL. Yeah, you want me to root for the Rams, so I left a team here.
That's true. But to get to a more important point here is that not only did you move to California, you went to a very specific high school. Can you remind me what that high school is?
Is that what you were getting at? I grew up. Listen, I grew up in a town outside of Anaheim. We'll just say it's Anaheim adjacent. That's all we have to do. Do I have to say that I'm from Corona High?
Oh, I'm sorry. What was it? Corona High?
Corona High.
Whoa. I didn't say that. I didn't know. I just knew it was.
I think it was worse because I went to COVID junior high.
That was it. And then you go until you're 18 and then you graduate when you're COVID-19. That makes sense. Okay. So basically what I'm trying to get at is last year, the Bears season was so horrendous, right? And there's a lot of...
It was 8-8. Okay. I mean, for our expectations.
For your expectations, yes.
For the Lions, that would have been amazing.
That would have been a celebration for the next 3 years.
Patricia would have had a parade.
So that being said, right? There's a lot of crazy conspiracy theories going out right there, right? That like, Corona was created in a lab, the government's doing it so they can change the batteries on the pigeons outside. Lots of crazy stuff.
5G.
But 5G, of course. And I think, one of the stories that really hasn't been talked about so much, you see the Bears doing poorly and the Packers doing well. And I'm just putting things together. A guy goes to Corona High School and all of a sudden there's a pandemic. I'm not making any accusations. I'm just saying it's a little weird.
It is a little coincidental. And that is one of the things, and unfortunately I have a neighbor who just today decided to hang a flag outside of their house who would probably believe a conspiracy theory like that. And unfortunately for Packer fans, that conspiracy did not take place before the NFC Championship game to kind of keep you from some embarrassment, or maybe that was part of it. Maybe that was the whole thing.
It was in the psyche of everybody. It hadn't really hit here yet, and I think I'm just saying, Adam, you're a pretty popular guy. You have a lot of followers on the social medias. I'm sure you know a lot of people. You're feeling down about the Bears game, season, really. You go, you mess around a weekend, with some biotech friends, accidentally create, the next plague. I've heard crazier things.
You know what? It would really not be the most outlandish thing. I watched a special on CNN. This wouldn't have made the cut. They're like, nah, this is too normal for what a lot of those people are believing.
100%. Okay. So I just wanted to get the accusations of you creating the coronavirus over a weekend with your friends out of the way first in the beginning of the show.
Right. We'll get at the great way to start.
Yeah. I figured because you got to ease them into it. Right.
Well, and it's showmanship. You always start off with your second best joke.
Thank you.
Finish with the best one. And so, yes, that was the way to go.
I appreciate that. It really is an art. And I feel like the nuances in creating this art really go unnoticed, but I appreciate you examining that. So you're a stand-up comedian, and that obviously, is apparent in the way that you predict teams' wins and losses.
Fair enough,
so
yeah.
Can you kind of dive into two things? One, when you're looking at a team, right? Yes. Do you look at the Green Bay Packers every year and just hope for the absolute worst, and that is reflected in your prediction? Because that's what everyone in the comments says.
That's what they feel. Yeah, that is. First of all, I gotta point this out too. This is the first time, and I believe that this is in the history of anything, that you have two comics together talking, and neither one of us are wearing a hoodie. I don't think that it's ever happened. I just noticed that. Like neither one. Like this is weird. I was sitting here watching. I'm like, we don't look. No, one of us is required to wear a hoodie.
That's 100% accurate.
We messed that up. And so yeah, my predictions were some of my greatest hits. That's my comedy album. Like I don't have a comedy album to hang on my wall, but I can always go. And again with showmanship, I opened with the Titans 3-13 record, but closed with the 49ers going 3-13. Although I do want to say, in fairness to me, first of all, number one, the Titans, your team still sucks. Like you were 9-7. Quit acting like you were some great team. Like the 49ers, like that was an obvious whip. With Marcus Mariota, your team was miserable. You were 2-4. Titan fans who had been blowing me up in week 6 were like, oh, we're sorry. You were correct, sir. And then all of a sudden they're like, don't see, we told you. We went 9-7. They're doing the McGregor walk. All of a sudden like this. Like, look at us. And you beat the Patriots when that franchise was in decline. Yeah, you played okay, and you beat the Ravens because the Ravens can't catch up to anybody once you get a lead on them. And then the Chiefs barely even tried. They didn't even show up in the first quarter, and then they said, "Oh God, we got to play this game," and they blew you out. So that you're the Jags of 2019. Congratulations. The 49ers was a whiff. But the 49ers were obviously a whiff, and at some point you're like, yeah, I was wrong. Like, what do you want to do? I will say, last year, and Packer fans will remember this, I predicted your team to go 12-4. I thought that Matt LaFleur was going to come in, and with the schedule, the way it laid out, I thought that they were good. And it pained me. Like, I don't want this to happen.
Sure.
This is not the way I want this to go, but they're a good team. And, we have fun. We make jokes about Aaron Rodgers. and Brett Favre, and the fact that Eli Manning has as many Super Bowl rings as those two quarterbacks combined. Like, we make those jokes, but at the same time, like, you still have to recognize he's a good quarterback. Like, he's an excellent quarterback. And it's it's one of those things. And so I do want, like, I hate picking when you look at a game.
Sure.
And you're like, oh, there's the Packers against, who is it? Like, the North is easy because you're going to probably sweep the division again. Oh, give us one. Give us one. Just give us one.
Okay, I'll give you one.
And so you look at it and you're like, oh, they're playing, like, they're better than this team. Like, they're better than this team. And it's like, it's defeating. You're like, this isn't fun for me. Like, yes, you're good. Yes, you're good.
Going through the motions.
It's like watching your ex-girlfriend, date somebody super handsome. You're like, yes, he's very good looking. I'm happy for you. Congratulations.
Yes,
I don't know
but
what
just
you want me to say.
Wishing for the absolute worst. No, I hear that. I mean, listen, if it makes you feel any better, the 49ers were undefeated, and I was just like, nah, they're a fraud of a team. There's no way. And then they kicked the ever-living crap out of us the first time, and I was like, okay, I could have been wrong. That may have been a thing. That could have been a mistake. Two things. Now I'm going to go off on a tangent. You were talking about the Packers having good quarterbacks. For the Bears, have the Chicago Bears ever taken the approach of just drafting a good one? Because we have found that has been successful.
No. We want to go a different way, and that's just not the Chicago way. It's like Connery in the Untouchables. That's not the Chicago way. This is my life. This is legitimately serious. The three best quarterbacks in Bears history of my lifetime. Mm-hmm. Of my lifetime. Don't go back. There's probably a dude in the 40s who are like, what about, like, shut up, Mike North. Like, I wasn't alive back then, okay? The three best Bears quarterbacks of my lifetime have been Jim McMahon, Jay Cutler, and Walter Payton on the halfback option. That's it. That's the list.
Hey, listen, Matt Forte, I'm pretty sure threw it once or twice.
He was dope too. That's the thing, though. It's like they have no problem finding an abundance of great running backs.
Correct.
But the quarterback, they're like, nah, whatever. Like,
don't really need
the
it.
NFL. It's still like it seems like such a George Halas thing where it's like, we just need to run the football. Like, play like, no, how about we throw it? Like, that's the way the NFL is played now. Like, that's
even just like a couple times. Like, it doesn't have to be a lot. Like, it could be a Kirk Cousins versus Atlanta last year. Like, it's just a few times, right? But that's the thing too, though. But you guys don't want to use your running backs either because David Montgomery's just like, hey, I'm real good. He's just like, no,
that is
silly.
That's the one thing that I try to impress upon people is, like, I understand that if you drafted him in fantasy, that didn't work out. And I'm happy to, I'm not happy, but, like, let's be realistic. Like, that didn't work out, but you couldn't watch the player and be like, this guy sucks. Like, he's good. In that stupid game against the Chargers where they're running it down their throat, especially at the end of the game. And you're like, oh, punch it in for the touchdown. I like Eddie P, but I'm glad he won that game in Denver, but, like, let's just not count that this is going to be automatic.
Correct.
Keep running. This Chargers, like, if there's a team that likes to mail it in, it's the Chargers. Like, they're happy to lose that game. That's what the Chargers do. They're the jobber. They're the AEW, WWE jobber who knows that it's their job to go over their enhancement talent. You put other teams over. Like, that's what they do. They're like, hey, like, they're the face that comes out and smiles and they wave and people cheer for them. They don't know why, but they're cheering for them. And then all of a sudden, they're Hurricane Helms. Like, just put somebody over.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, too, though, because they don't have any home field advantage. So, like, it is their job. Like, if you're doing the Vince McMahon logic, you got to send the people home happy. The vast majority of the fans who are there are not of you. So, you got to send them home happy.
Well, I will say, though,
last year, that didn't work out.
I was going to say, there was a game in Carson that I can remember where what happened there? And that's the one thing about the Chargers is that they have a 2-week stretch where you're like, oh, and I live out here in Southern California, and when the Chargers won those 2 games, still nobody cared. But there was like 6 people at Wahoo's Fish Tacos who were like, bro, like, I think we're going to turn the season around now. And I'm like, you're not. Have you not seen this movie? Like, were you Charger fans are the dude who go to, like, Wedding Crashers. And they're like, oh, my God, Owen Wilson's never going to get this girl. I'm like, do you not know how movies work? This is the second act. This is where everything looks forlorn. And for the Chargers, there's that stretch in the middle of the season where you're like, maybe the Empire is going to win this time. And you're like, no, they're not.
It's never going to, they're going to blow up the Death Star. That's what's going to happen. It just has to happen that way. Like, and then they rewatch the same season over and over and over and over again. By the way, I'm glad that we already worked in a Star Wars reference as you're drinking out of a Darth Vader mug. This is.
Oh, you like that? Yeah, the little symmetry right there.
That's perfection. So the second question I had with your predictions was Brandon Perna.
Oh, geez.
Okay? Oh, yes, Brandon Perna. You didn't pick the Broncos to do too well last year.
Right.
And you weren't necessarily wrong.
May I talk about that for a second?
Please.
Like, this is a fun thing, too. Is there was a kid who was blowing me up, and he's like, dude, we're going 12-4. You're an idiot. And you're like, okay, well, like, one of us is going to be way wrong. And when they went 7-9, he was like, who was right? And I'm like, sometimes these are a draw. Like, I can, like, number one, I told you that Joe Flacco was going to be bad. You were not going to make the playoffs. And that's it. You could also look at it from the fact that they finished in second. Drew Lock was pretty good. Mm-hmm. So we can take it like, like I wasn't like they're not quite to the level of delusion of Titan fans, but they're a Jace. They're their cousin of like, hey man, you were super, like you won 7 games. Calm down.
They're right there. They're sitting across. They're sitting at the same table at the wedding, and they're just like, man, how unstoppable were we last season?
Like we were good. Oh, and then they start getting into a fight because the Broncos beat the Titans, and then you're like, okay, those two will take care of themselves.
That is. So what I'm asking though is, Brandon Perna, right? You went on his show, right?
Yep.
Very successful, great show. Love Brandon Perna. And then all of a sudden this year, if I'm not mistaken, it was 11-5.
Yeah, I got them at 11-5.
Winning the division too.
Yes.
So the question is, what is the payment plan look like to go from losers to not only having a winning record, but winning your division? And is that rate increased because it's the Green Bay Packers?
Well, yes, because part of the agreement was the fact that Colorado has such great craft beers. So you got to, I don't know what Wisconsin's craft beer scene is like, but that's going to be a part of the deal. And we also, if it's going to be the Packers, we're going to need Aaron Rodgers to break up with Danica. That would be the first thing that would help us out to where I could do. So if you could, that's the first step. I think that happened though. No way.
I think that happened last week.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, listen, now we're talking.
Now
we're starting to check some of the boxes. Okay. That's perfect.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that happened last week. I know E reported on it and people were asking me to do a video on it. And I was like, no.
Yes. That was one of the worst. And I don't know how that relationship worked. I don't know. But if I would have had a lot of, like, let's say, now I'm happily married. I have 2 children. But let's say I was a single man.
Sure.
And I was dating, I don't know. Like, I don't even know who a famous Packers fan is. But, like, I would do, or if you were dating a WNBA, if I was dating a WNBA star who played for the Lynx, I would still show up in my LA Sparks jersey. And be like, what up, girl? Like, listen, I go way back with Lisa Leslie. I supported this team from day one. Like, I'm not changing my way. I don't know if she ever did that or how that ever worked, but there was always like, really, Aaron, like that's like, you've ruined my life enough. Then you have to start dating a Bears, like one of the biggest Bears fans in the world. Like that just makes sense. And so, okay, well, we're already working. We're already starting the negotiations.
Think, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. That's what I'm saying.
I think so.
We're crossing off the boxes. And to your point, I am married as well. I don't have any children, but, same idea. If Aaron Rodgers became newly available, my wife understands. But in that sense, that has nothing to do with the point that you just raised. I just wanted to use you as a platform to get my name in the running for when Aaron Rodgers goes on The Bachelor, like his brother. So I just wanted to take that time. We don't do ad breaks in here, but we do sponsorships to try to get me in front of Aaron Rodgers.
How do you guys feel about the fact that Jordan Rodgers has more recently won a ring than his brother Aaron? Is that something that you guys talk about? Like, I don't know how that goes.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that relationship didn't work out. I mean,
No.
my wife watches it, and I watch it when I'm sitting on the couch and, want to die. And then I'll watch it with her. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that relationship didn't work out. So
No way. JoJo and Jordan?
I'm pretty sure. Again, I could be wrong. I could be very, very wrong. But what you just said hurt deeply. Anyway, so talking about the the picks that you make, I am very curious because I feel like, when I do picks on this show, I preface it with, I'm like, hey, like, I'm a dude in a basement. I do all the research I can. I'm obviously a fan. I try to take the homerism out of it. And you even mentioned that when you're talking about the Bears. We'll get to your picks. But the Bears, like, everyone's going to call me a homer, what have you. But I feel like people take it so incredibly personally when you're just like, I don't think your team's going to perform because of X, Y, and Z. And they're just like, well, sir, you have offended my mother.
That's basically it. Like, it is. I've insulted a family member. I have stood up at a wedding and tried to call it off or something like that. It's a big. And I understand. We grew up as sports fans. We were sending email. I don't know. At least I was sending emails to sports reporters, being like, "You don't know what you're talking about." So now when it happens to me, I'm like, "Yeah, okay. It's going full circle." Like, Simba is now telling me that I don't know what I'm doing. That's fine. I have no problem with that. I do spend a lot of time writing a series for NFL.com called The State of the Franchise, where I give a synopsis of every team, all 32. And so I feel like I'm kind of up to date with the teams.
Sure.
And then you go through and again, there's so many things that happen during the course of a season that do you make a prediction based on that? Do you go out and say, like, I bet Mariota gets benched in week 6 and Ryan Tannehill turns into the second coming of Steve Young? Like, that would have been a pretty impressive call. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you go through it and you're like, well, this is why I see this happening. Like, I believe I have the Titans somewhere around the 500 mark. And the Titan fans, of course, are super pissed. And I'm like, you guys were 9-7 last year. You've lost Jack Conklin. You traded Jarrell Casey. And you need to hope that you can give the ball to Derrick Henry 400 times. You need to hope that Ryan Tannehill is as good as he looked at the end of the year. But you're now also one of those teams that people are gunning for. And the Colts are going to be a lot better. And,
you think
you're playing.
They are?
I really do. I think that if you can protect Phillip Rivers, I think a lot of what happened to Phillip Rivers was the fact that he was frustrated. I mean, for somebody who played the good soldier for so long, commuting from Fallbrook, which is in San Diego, to LA, not making a big deal when they moved the team, didn't ask to be traded or do anything, tried to make the best of it. But that offensive line was atrocious. Going back to once Nick Hardwick retired, the offensive line was never the same. They never really addressed it. And the most disheartening thing is the moves they made this season to improve the like what? Like, Rivers is gone now?
Yeah, now they're just like, it's like the Giants, like with Eli Manning, who hasn't had an offensive line. I mean, at least they tried to address it with like a Nate Solder. Obviously didn't work out. But then they're just like, okay, now we're going to go and draft offensive linemen to take care of our new Danny Dimes here. Like, all of a sudden, Eli has to be sitting at home being like, son of a bitch.
What's happening? Yeah, like it's the NFL equivalent of a revenge body. Like, why? Yeah. Like Rivers, like, I didn't want to break up with you. You got rid of me, and then you lost a bunch of weight, walking around looking hot, going to clubs. Like, this is not cool. So I honestly believe that if you put him in that situation in Indianapolis with that offensive line, which is probably the best in the NFL, if not the best, they're top 3.
Sure.
You got a solid running game. Marlon Mack it's surprising that they went after Jonathan Taylor, because I thought Marlon Mack
he was good.
Is pretty good. Yeah, he's a good player. So, okay, you got Jonathan Taylor. You bring in Michael Pittman Jr., who, if USC hadn't become the dumpster fire that you've seen over the last couple of years, he would have been one of the more talked about receivers. I think he's in that conversation with Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. He was just, USC wasn't as good. And so I do believe that the Colts can be better. I think that, they've done a great job in the draft. They've smartly built their team through the offensive line. And so that is the way to go. But that's what you're doing. So you're trying to project, Like, I think this could happen. Like, there's 100 different things that could go wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, because like in that sense, though, how much hate would you guesstimate that you like? If you had to say it was like a ratio between like positivity comments and just like dumpster fire, would you say that the result is mostly negative?
I would say close to 98% negative.
Okay, all right.
Nobody. Wow, here's the interesting thing as well, is that anytime, whatever you pick, and I believe that the Steelers will bounce back this season. They had one of the top defenses last year, and if they had any sort of replacement level performance from the quarterback position, they would have been in the playoffs. By the way, Titans, you would have made the playoffs last year had the Steelers had an actual quarterback. And so you're like, oh, I think the Steelers could go 13-3. I think that they're that good. And then now the Steeler fans are like, thanks for jinxing us.
Yeah.
You're never right. I'm like, okay, look, I know that I famously have the 49ers thing will be infamous forever, but it's like I predicted last year that the Bengals would start 0-11 and that their first win would be against the Jets, which is kind of a tough predict, but like nobody cares. They're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
you got it right.
I mean, that is impressive.
That's what you get paid to do. You're like, you're right.
You're like, I can't win. You're like, I can't win at this point because, like you said, it's just like, okay, I can pick these guys to do this, and then I'm going to get hate for saying they're going to be good, and then the teams that you predict to not do so well, they're going to hate you as well. I think at this point, well, you know what? At least there's 2%. That's something. It's
the Seattle fans. The Seahawks fans love me. Like literally, like they're like, I get along. Really, God, now I'm sounding like I get along well, but I get along great. No, the Seahawks fans have much respect because last year I picked them to make the playoffs. I have them making the playoffs again this year. But a couple of years ago, when they were in the Super Bowl against Peyton Manning, I was the only one on NFL.com and on NFL Network who was like, the Seahawks are going to blow this team out. Like, it's going to be atrocious. It is going to be it's going to be like that USC Oklahoma game. And it's not even going to be close, and it's going to be brutal. And, of course, the Bronco fans, you don't know what you're talking about. You just hate Peyton Manning, blah, blah, blah. And then first snap of the game. Fumble, safety. See you guys later. I was actually standing next to a member of the Seahawks broadcast team. And right as that, because we were in that end zone, or in the stands in that end zone, and it was loud. Like, it was noticeably loud. Like, oh, my God, like, Seahawks fans, shut up. This is a cool atmosphere. Then that ball goes right over Peyton's head. You're like, well, congratulations. This one's over. And then I remember them like going at halftime, like, hey man, like Peyton Manning, I'm like, what have you seen in the history of Peyton Manning that leads you to believe that he's going to rally a team in the cold? Like, there's no chance. And of course, Percy Harvin takes the second half kickoff to the house. And you're like, okay, we've put that to bed. This is not going to be a Peyton Manning rally.
I feel like it was so funny too, because so I'm in New York. So like when that game was being played, I feel like the NFL was just like, okay, like let's get this game done, because like it was cold. Like let's get this game done and let's never come back here again for a Super Bowl. Because I feel like, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't there like a huge storm that was like supposed to come like around during that time? There was like some weather thing that was going to happen.
We barely missed it. Yeah, because on the next morning, going back to Newark Airport, it was shut down. And we were the only, like, we were in a plane and we're like, hey, when are you letting us off? They're like, no, we're going to charge it. Like, what? We're going to charge it? And like, no, like, like they're de-icing the plane. It's a chartered Southwest flight. And we're like, no, dude, like this can't happen. But it was snowing. So we missed it by a matter of hours, or else it would have been a snowy Super Bowl. And it was cold and it was tough. Like, it's a tough stadium to get to.
No, it is a very difficult stadium to get to. I mean, old Meadowlands Stadium wasn't easy either. So it was just, but that's, again, they're in Jersey. We have a thing about that. The only New York team are the Bills, but yeah, I get you. So, all right, now let's get into the nitty gritty, what people really wanted to hear. How many more tight ends are the Bears going to pick up?
You know what? It's the off season. And at some point you got to go out and you got to accumulate this kind of talent. And you're going to hope that one of them, listen, as bad as we've been at quarterback, we've been as equally bad at tight end. And, finally, when we drafted one, Greg Olson, you're like, this guy's a stud. Mike Martz comes walking in like, tight ends don't play in my offense. It's like, well, then, bitch, get a new offense. Like, how do you not see that this guy is the best player that we have on offense? Like, if there's one player to build around, it's number 82.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they got to bring in a bunch of guys. Look, I don't know. You just got to figure it out. You're at I don't know if they have Total Wine in New York, but you go in there and you grab a bunch of independent beers. Like, okay, Ale Smith, cool. I'll grab this one. Like, eventually, one of them you're gonna like.
Yeah,
you just gotta try.
I get
we
that.
We got a variety pack. Like, what do you want from us?
Well, that being said, though,
wait, when are you guys getting a tight end? Like,
excuse me. First of all, we have tight ends. We have it. Ours just got injured. His name was Jay Sternberger, fan of the show. So he's tight end one forever. But we got Mercedes Lewis. We got Robert Tonyan. We went and got DeGuara in the draft, which we'll definitely talk about this draft. But I'm saying we got tight ends. And to your analogy, we have halftime in New York, whereas you could just go and bet a bunch of beers. Okay. I also wouldn't have seen my friend get a beer, pay a lot of money for that beer, and him spit it out and say, this beer was terrible, and then go to that store and pay $16 million over the next 2 years for that same beer that my friend just spit out. Because you kind of did that with Jimmy Graham.
Whatever. First of all, we're just hoping that he's going to get a magical spot like Jimmy did in the divisional playoff round. That's what we're hoping for. Like, oh, is it the jersey that gets the credit? Or is it just is it Jimmy Graham? Is it the jersey? Like, who knows? Like, that is one of the most interesting things that, like, I think that nobody is talking about for this. I'm sorry, I'm going to take us off topic for a second.
There's no topics.
Things that nobody talks about this season, which I think is going to be incredible, is Cam Newton. Now, Cam Newton, they let defenders take advantage of him when he was playing for Carolina. They had the Shaq rules, and, like, guys could hit him late and do whatever. And, somebody probably had brass knuckles in their tights or whatever, like old school Arn Anderson, or doing whatever. But now he's playing for a team where you're not allowed to touch the quarterback. Does that rule carry over? Like, what wins? Is it like you can do whatever you want to Cam, or is it you're not allowed to touch a Patriots quarterback? Like, which one of those rules is going to win out?
It's fascinating to me. So I have a really good friend of mine is a Patriots fan, and like what started happening last season, like a lot of it, and it's happened every now and then, but like there was more and more people going, the NFL is rigged, like straight up. They're like, the NFL is completely and totally rigged. They're just redoing Super Bowl I. It's going to be Chiefs versus the Packers, blah, 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 which obviously, yeah, that worked out really well. But the other thing was, Roger Goodell has all these problems with the New England Patriots, right? Do you think that they would have won that many Super Bowls? And Roger Goodell's got to be like, all right, guys, for the 6th time we're up here. Here you go. Like, no, like just use the slightest bit of logic. But you make a very good point because, yeah, no, you didn't touch that. But I wonder if that's a Tom Brady thing.
That's the thing. That's what I'm curious about.
I wonder if that carries over to Tampa. And they're just like, no, nay.
Like, yes, you can no longer touch the Tampa Bay quarterback. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they're allowed, if the teams in the AFC East are allowed to take liberties with Cam Newton like they did before.
What they'll do is they'll just like, because Cam's going to wear the 1, obviously. He'll just like draw in a 2, like, so it's just like Tom Brady's jersey. So the rest will like not know. And they'll be like, boom, like you can't touch him. You can't. I think Cam's going to do very well with New England.
I do too. I'm with you 100%. I also, because he wore 2 at Auburn, is that it would have been cool if he did wear 12.
That'd be awesome.
And he just no. Like, I wore 1 at Carolina, I wore 2 at Auburn, so it just makes sense that I wear 12. Why? What's the big deal? Like, why would I not be allowed to wear this? I don't get it.
Oh, because Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. No, but he's in a whole different conference. It's fine. There's no big deal.
Good. No big deal.
That would be amazing. That would have been incredible just to see the reaction to it. So that being said, with the Bears, last season,
yes, Didn't go as planned.
Yeah, it was the Friends theme song. No one told me that life was going to be this way. Clap, clap, clap. And going into this, and I am still on Team Trubisky. And what I mean by that is, wait, let me finish.
I know it's speaker view, so let me get a shot of my face.
Yeah.
Let me keep looking at you and not looking at the camera.
Yeah, it's fine. So we'll just the entire audio will just be like, what's going on over there? Here's the thing. I don't think Mitch Trubisky is a good quarterback. However, I also don't think that all of the trials and tribulations and problems that the Bears had last year should all be loaded on him, because there were a ton of other issues. And my main comment is there's Bear fans that I know who are like, when Nick Foles gets in there, it's going to be all better, right? Or the idea where it's going to improve. And I'm like, you guys still, you have to run the ball. The play calling has to get better. The offensive line has to get better, which you didn't address until much later in the draft. The defense is still going to be top 5 because that defense is really good. But all that being said, it's not just just swap and have a nice day. I feel like there are more problems to that team than just Mitch Trubisky. And watching your predictions, of what was going to happen, you said Trubisky starts the season and then gets pulled after the Atlanta game.
Yes.
My question is, why do you think Trubisky is even going to start the season?
Well, especially now with no preseason games and the continuity, even though Nick Foles has familiarity with Matt Nagy, obviously, and he knows how to run that offense, they still want Mitch to succeed. And I believe that unless Nick Foles were to just absolutely blow away the competition in training camp, they still want to see if Mitch can be a quarterback in the NFL. Now, obviously, he's going to be a quarterback in the NFL for a long time, because at the very least, he'll be a backup somewhere.
Sure.
Or he'll go someplace and win a Super Bowl, and we'll be like, well, that's perfect.
This is fine.
That's great. But yeah, so I do believe that they want to give him another opportunity to go out there. And there's some things he's got to work through. I believe a lot of his problems were just not playing enough football. And that was my biggest argument against drafting him when they did. And one of the reasons why was because he didn't play a lot in high school. He played just 1 year in Carolina, and he is the kind of player that a team, I'm not saying the Packers, but a team like the Packers who have a quarterback and you're trying to build the bridge, would have been able to, you sit on the bench, you're going to learn how to play. 4 years from now, you're going to come out and you're going to be a stud. For a team like the Bears, I felt they needed a quarterback who was ready to start, which is why I always lean towards Deshaun Watson. Now, Patrick Mahomes surprised a lot of people, and it's easy in hindsight to be like, look, you could have, the whole thing about you could have had Mahomes, look, he went to the perfect situation.
Yes, I'm saying a lot of people don't point that out. He even said, because I was watching the Alex Smith documentary, which was horrifying. But Alex Smith is literally one of the most perfect QBs to sit and learn behind. And I think he played in one game, Mahomes, his rookie year. And that was
17,
it. Yeah, and that was it. And then he came out. I don't think that he is the same QB. Not that's nothing against his talent or anything, but I don't think he has the same early success unless he sits that year behind an Alex Smith. Because if you just throw him into the fire, that what happens to a lot of QBs nowadays, there's no guarantee that these guys are going to be any good.
No, 100%. And and to me, coming into the draft, we had seen Deshaun Watson play a number of high-profile games. He beat Alabama. This guy was ready to start. To me, I didn't understand why he wasn't the quarterback that they were targeting, because he can play. We knew he could play. And when he started to play for the Texans, he was amazing. Mm-hmm. And in his rookie year, before that unfortunate injury in practice, he was the talk of the NFL. He went to Seattle when they're still a good team, obviously. Yeah. He went to Seattle and won. This guy you just couldn't unnerve him. And he's a great quarterback. To me, that's the quarterback that they missed on. And now I kind of feel bad for Deshaun because his Madden rating is stupid. And he was the guy. He was the first guy. He was the first guy in, and then he was passed up. Obviously Mahomes, MVP, wins a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson wins an MVP award. It's like Deshaun Watson is Soundgarden, and the other two are Nirvana and Pearl Jam. You were the first, and you're awesome. We love Chris Cornell, but then the other two kind of passed you up, and you're like, well, this sucks. What about me? Why am I
And I feel like also too, the situation that he's in now, like it doesn't help anybody. Like that game against the Bills, like that's Deshaun Watson. Like he's the one who goes out and it's like this, like DeAndre Hopkins, great player, JJ Watt, great. But I'm saying like Deshaun Watson, getting freaking sandwiched between two Bills defenders coming right at him. And it's just like, never mind, guys, I got this. Like, I'm literally going to go win us the game now.
Right.
Like, you don't see that a whole lot unless you're like an elite talent. And yeah, I 100% agree. He gets overshadowed because of all those reasons, because you do have these up and coming guys who get all the press and all the attention. And then you're just like, oh yeah, it's Deshaun Watson who's, stuck with Bill O'Brien down in Houston.
And that is the one. So whenever people put out the memes and there's like, hey, here's Mahomes in a Bears jersey, I'm like, that one, because that's not realistic.
Sure.
And I remember our own Matt Money Smith, to throw him under the bus. He was on a podcast where he pushed back from the table. He's like, nope, this guy's not good. And he did one of those moves. And you're like, that's one that you watch back and you're like, well, that was unfortunate. But it's like, he's a good quarterback. He would have been a good NFL quarterback. But to me, the realistic choice at that moment was Deshaun Watson. And whenever I see him play for the Texans, and listen, like if I'm like, Bill O'Brien's crazy. If I'm Ryan Pace, like I hope you've called him at least
You're
once.
Calling him at least.
And been like, listen, we'll give you Tony Miller and we'll give you Mitch. You send us Deshaun. I think we got a deal. Shake on it.
That's it. I mean, I don't see why that doesn't go through, considering everything else that has happened. Yeah, why not? I mean, he's what? Head coach. He's the GM.
He's everything.
He's going to run for president at some point, and I'm talking about of the United States.
Right.
It's going to happen. So at this point, give him a call. And what's the worst that can happen? You can say no, or maybe you have to throw in like a 3rd round pick. Maybe.
What do you have to lose?
Absolutely
nothing. What do you have to lose?
So that being said, you think that Foles coming in is going to be an improvement over Trubisky? I think one, like you were talking about, is experience, obviously, right?
Yes.
Nick Foles has a ton of experience. The thing that worries me about Nick Foles is two things. One, he's never played a full season in his entire professional career in the NFL, which is, if I'm a Bears fan with that offensive line, a little scary. And two, on top of that, is you just threw a bunch of, because it's like, what, $21 million in guaranteed that they took over from Jacksonville. Like, that's a lot of money to sink in. So even if he does better than Trubisky, you still have Mitch Trubisky and, Ryan Pace picking him. Like, I feel like as a Bears fan, how do you walk in and you're like, okay, cool, I'm really confident now about the management of this team and like the future of the team?
Well, there's a number of different ways to look at that, because again, for the whole, like the formula, you laid out the formula. Like Nick Foles doesn't play a full season. Bringing him in at some point in week 6 or 7, that's the formula. With this deep, that's what you want. Like, yeah, don't play the first couple of weeks. We'll bring you in when we're ready to unleash you. You're a reliever that can't go 7 innings or whatever it is. And obviously the Mitch Trubisky pick has not worked out, and it's going to be scrutinized forever because of the way that the 2 quarterbacks picked after him have played, and he'll always have to wear that. But one of the things that goes unnoticed is that Ryan Pace has done a really nice job of building a pretty good roster. And you look at the defense, especially how good they are. And you talk about things that went sideways last year, finishing 8-8. Obviously, a lot of people in Chicago or Chicago fans would hope for an extended playoff run, but a lot of it to me came down to the injury to Akeem Hicks, which happened in London. And that happened during the game against the Raiders. And the Raiders were able to rally because Akeem was out. And if the Bears would have hung on to win that game, they go into their bye week 5-1, which to me, I think turns the season a little bit. And if you look at that game, and I know it's easy to do, and you look at the Charger game, that perhaps you just don't rely on Eddie P to go out there and you just drive down the field, find a way to score. Those 2 games, if you switch the records there, they're 10-6. They're now in the playoffs because they swept the Vikings. And I know Viking fans like to point out, like, well, we had clinched the playoff, and I'm like, listen, we beat the best Vikings quarterback in week 17. So you just stop it right there. Yeah. Kirk Cousins' history shows us he would have shown up to beat the Bears. Like, stop it.
Yeah,
just stop it right now.
Just go home. You're drunk.
Goodness gracious. So when you look at a lot of these moves. And I think bringing in Bobby Quinn was great. And, you know, Floyd was a good NFL, like he's a good football player, but he wasn't the pass rusher that they needed him to be. Hopefully he can find himself out here in Los Angeles. Yeah. But he's done a really nice job in picking up guys like Eddie Jackson. Like I like to pretend that they took Eddie Jackson in the first round and Mitch Trubisky was their fourth round quarterback. Then you're like, it's not a bad draft.
It works then.
We risked a fourth round pick on Trubisky. But I think overall, I'm bringing in Allen Robinson, who I hope gets extended at some point because it's ridiculous that he's not. But, you know, if you start and some of these picks, you know, we're seeing it. And they've done a nice job. I feel like 21 players, 21 on 21, they're as good as anybody. But it always comes down to that quarterback. And that is going to be the thing that, you know, you're always going to have to wear that because that is your blockbuster that you missed on. Like if Ryan Reynolds, you know, until he did Deadpool, you're like, well, I mean, a lot of your other stuff is cool, but you sucked as Green Lantern. Like that is going to be around your neck forever until you find your Deadpool. So I hope that, you know, either Nick Foles is Deadpool or Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback next year, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that quarterback is going to hang over.
Because, like, that's another thing, too. Like, you know, the Jaguars paid, I think it was like $88 million or something when they brought Foles in. And, you know, they went with Minshew over that. And, like, listen, Minshew had a good year. You know, it was a solid year. You know, the Minshew Mania was great. You know, all the outfits were great. But I think, like, that also is, I want to say, like, a telling sign of, like, the Jaguars. I don't know if they believe in Minshew. I think they might just tank for Trevor, but that's a whole other story. Like, the idea is they're going to let Foles leave, who did a number on their cap. Like, he's leaving a bunch of dead money in behind him. But, like, is that at all worrisome? Or is it because you basically didn't really have to trade a whole lot? You're kind of like, you know what? It's better potentially than what we have.
Yeah, looking back and seeing that, you know, Cam Newton was signed for free by the New England Patriots. Andy Dalton going to the Cowboys for free. And so, yeah, it is a little disappointing to give up a fourth-round pick, especially because Ryan Pace has had some success in that round. And so, yeah, it would have been, in hindsight, like, we didn't need to pay to get in here. Like, you're at a club, and you're like, what was the cover? You're like, damn, we paid $20, and your friend's like, I just walked in for free. Like, son of a bitch. Like, okay. So, yeah, from that perspective, and it also, it's another thing, too, like another spoke of that wheel, is that the Bears were one of two teams who talked to Gardner Minshew at the Combine last year. And had they just picked him in the sixth round or wherever the Jags took him, like, whatever, let's just take this Gardner Minshew kid.
Why not?
Who knows? Like, because Mitch was hurt for a couple of games. You're like, Gardner seems like the mustache alone makes him a Bears quarterback.
100%.
So you're like, oh, my God, like that's the kind of guy I would have loved to have had on our team. So yeah, that's tough. I mean, they always say that if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And I think with the Bears, like, you actually have three quarterbacks because you got Foles and then you got two different versions of Mitch Trubisky.
Very true.
And I would look back, and it all comes down to one son of a Harrison Smith, who 2 years ago, during the Bears playoff run in a game where, of course, the Bears beat the Vikings, Harrison Smith late hit Mitch, who was running, and he became a little bit more apprehensive out of the pocket. And then last year, he got hurt against the Vikings again. And a lot of what you saw is that Mitch didn't run for the longest time. He had the torn labrum. Sure. And it's like, dude, like, this year, I think he knows that he has to put it all out there. Like, if he wants to be the quarterback of the Bears and play on, he's got to put it all out there. He can't be afraid to get hurt. And when you see him run and use his athleticism, like, he's a decent quarterback.
Yeah, no, he's slippery. Like, if when he adds that running aspect to his game, yeah, I mean, like, that's one of his strengths. And, like, you see it. And, like, there was two games, I think, last season where he played, like, it was the Dallas game.
Yeah.
Like, he played, like, really, really well.
He YOLO'd it. Yeah, he really did. Like, that was the first time since his injury against the Vikings where he's just like, screw it, I got to do this.
Yeah. So I wonder if you're, you know, to speak to your point about him starting, like, that's the Mitch Trubisky you're going to see for however many games that they're going to allow him to sit under center. Because I feel like at some point Foles has to start. And because if you're going to give him that much money and you gave up the pick for him, like, I feel like it's just gonna happen. They didn't really do that for him to be a backup. It's like the Packers drafting Jordan Love. Like, they didn't spend a first round pick and trade up for him to be a backup.
Sure, they did. That's always, you know what? That's the one thing. If we can dive into this for a moment,
please.
And I love the pick. I don't know. Listen, I've been doing a lot of podcasts today. So if I've mentioned this before, like, tell me, be like, stop. You told this story like 20 minutes ago. But I had an Instagram post of when we were doing the prospect profiles, and I specifically said that Jordan Love would benefit going to a team like the Packers, which Packers fans told me I was an idiot.
100% agree. 100%.
And I go, and at the time when these were starting to come out, this is before Jordan had gotten into the first round, but still the point still stood. Like, he's a good, talented player. Mm-hmm. He can't play his first season. Like, it's impossible. But for the Packers to be in a position to where they're in the NFC Championship game, it just seems to me, and this is no knock on Jordan Love, and he might go out and haunt the Bears for another 30 years like I've had to live with my whole life. How close do you think you are to a Super Bowl? Because you are not behaving like a team that is building to win this year. And that is one of the things that you both have to admire and hate about the Packers is that they continually draft to be good forever. And every season, you're going to be in the mix. There's going to be a year here or there where it doesn't work out, injuries, anything like that can happen. But since Brett Favre took over as the quarterback of this team has been consistent and they've been good. But at some point, when you have these great players, don't you want to go for it? Like, don't you want to go all in? And I know it's easy for us as fans to come out and say, like, why didn't you trade up for CeeDee Lamb? Like, it's not that simple. It's not like, okay, Packers, just take them. Like,
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of things that go into it, and I understand, and I know that's a simplistic view of looking at it. But at the same time, you drafted your quarterback of the future and your running back of the future in your first 2 rounds, and for a team that was on the cusp of going to the Super Bowl, and maybe they saw that game against the 49ers and they're like, maybe we're not that close. But still, it's the one, like, why not go for it? Like, don't you owe it to Aaron at this point to be like, we're gonna do everything we can to get you there?
Yeah. Everything that you have said, literally, from that pick has been in the comments for like 2 months because and I've had this conversation and I don't think you're wrong. Because I think, you go back to the Ted Thompson era, right?
Yes.
In which, talking about going for it, Ted Thompson very, very, very rarely brought in any free agents, right? Barely dipped his toe in the water, really, really hit some home runs, when he did, but very, very rarely. And that drove Packers fans insane. They're like, look at this great player. Let's throw a ton of money at him, blah, 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 blah. And when Brian Gutekunst comes in, right off the bat, brings in 4 very expensive free agents, right? They bring in the Smith brothers. They bring in Amos. Thank you for him, by the way. I love him. And they bring in Billy Turner, who, out of the 4, he seems to be like the weaker link. So they dive right in and everyone's like, oh man, that's so great. Even though there are still people echoing going, oh man, we paid a lot of money for Zadarius Smith and for Preston Smith, which by the way, now looks like an amazing investment considering how those 2 tore up the league last year.
Oh my God. Yeah. Especially Zadarius.
Yeah. Literally. I think letting pressures. Yeah. It was just amazing. I love, and the leadership that he brings to the locker room, absolutely love him. And so heading into this draft, the analysis that you did for Jordan Love, I said that he needs to go to a team where he can just sit there, literally just sit there, because he had a really good 2018, then 2019 with very few weapons, and he forced a lot of balls, needs some better decision making, but he really has all the fundamentals that you want in a QB. And I wasn't against picking Jordan Love. What I was against was picking him where we picked him. And I think that, going into this or coming out of this draft, that's kind of how I felt about it. I didn't hate any of the picks, but where we did get them, there was that lingering of like, oh, okay, no wide receiver, huh? Like we weren't going to do that. And I think, Devin Funchess is not, I'm sorry, I can't get hyped about Devin Funchess. I've tried, I've looked in the mirror a lot and like try to force a grin or like, woo, it doesn't happen. Nothing comes out. And I think that Gutekunst looked at this and said, okay, obviously Jordan Love for the future. A.J. Dillon might be for the right now. I don't know if Jamal Williams stays on this team. And I think that Aaron Jones playing his ass off last year, being one of the best running backs in the league, putting up ridiculous numbers, I think he prices himself out of Green Bay. And this is his contract year. Like, he's done after this because he was a fifth or sixth round pick. And so there's no fifth year option. And I think, you bring in Dillon, you don't want to draft for need, right? Like, it's that idea of, yeah, sure, let's get 2 running backs. And if Jones has, I want to say an off year, but he doesn't have an incredible year, maybe he can sign on a hometown discount. Maybe, he's going to be cheaper than Derrick Henry. Maybe we can keep him. Or then you have A.J. Dillon, who gets to play this entire season. He's a bruising back, kind of 49ers-esque kind of play. And Matt LaFleur, loved Derrick Henry when he had him. So maybe they utilize that kind of offense. And I think that makes sense with the DeGuara pick too, because he is a very, run protection, can go out and catch the ball too, run protection kind of guy. I think that this draft just went against every single fan expectation, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong.
No, that's true. And I remember too, after that first night, everybody was like, well, this has been a deep draft for receivers. Yes. And a couple of the guys fell into the second round. T. Higgins, I believe, who went to Cincinnati. He was the first pick of the second round.
Yep.
Mims fell to the second round where the Jets got him. Chenault, also second rounder or third round, wherever he fell. But yeah, so you're like, okay, well, we got our quarterback of the future, and then we've also got a receiver. They didn't end up getting the receiver. But again, this could go back to like the Lazard King could come out and play well. And does it really matter? Like at the end of the day, too, I think as a Bears fan, I'm grasping and I'm trying to poke, I'm trying to make funny because I want you guys to be as miserable as us.
Of course.
And you're like, there's still doesn't matter. Well, what happens if Devontae Adams could go out there and catch 160 passes? He could do what Mike Thomas did last year.
Yeah.
What does it matter? Does the second receiver really matter? But I think from a fan perspective, it's always going to be a little bit more simplistic. Maybe we're biased by fantasy football or something like that. We're like, where's your second guy? It might not even matter. And A.J. Dillon probably, and listen, we're a little bit of a fantasy dip. People are overdrafting Aaron Jones because of the 19 touchdowns last year. And I've been drafting A.J. Dillon all over the place. Because I'm like, this is going to be the guy.
TD Vulture, baby.
Who at some point is going to be, you're like, God, because like you said, with the Derrick Henry thing, that's what Matt LaFleur wants, is he wants a Derrick Henry type running back. And I think that last year, and that was one of the things that I noticed about Aaron Rodgers, and as somebody who drafted Aaron Jones all over the place last year, thank you, I really enjoyed that there were times, and Rodgers' numbers suffered for this, that he would defer to Aaron Jones a lot, where you're like, oh, well, that was nice of you. I go, I don't know if somebody ever gave word to Rodgers that I had Aaron Jones on my team, I know he would go the other way. That's spiteful. So, but yeah, so I was appreciative of it. But, but like you said, the free agent moves that they've made have been pretty good, done a nice job. And Derek, God damn that guy. So good. And so, I don't know. I'm just trying to poke holes and I'm trying to be optimistic and I'm trying to be hopeful. As a Bears fan.
It makes sense though, too, because I got to tell you, Packers fans flipped on Brian Gutekunst real quick. We went from, we love this guy when they bring in Za'Darius and Preston and Amos, to people legitimately hate him now. And it went like that because of this draft. It went overnight. And the way that I'm looking at it is this way. One, you talk about Ryan Pace's legacy with Mitch Trubisky, right? It doesn't matter how well he drafts otherwise, but that's kind of always going to be the thing. He's now tied to Jordan Love. If Jordan Love doesn't work out, that's gonna be something that's gonna follow him around. But I'm looking at it in the sense of, did the Green Bay Packers get worse from last year to this year? We lost Brian Bulaga. That one hurts. We replaced him Ricky Wagner. I think is a downgrade. And we lost Blake Martinez, who I was okay with, and we bring in Christian Kirksey.
Yeah, that's fine. So if Kirksey can live up to the expectations he had when he was in Cleveland or anything like that, then he should be fine.
If he stays healthy, we're good.
That's a big part of it too, yes.
And I think that Brian Gutekunst kind of has just thrown a Hail Mary and just being like, I really hope that our younger guys that we have drafted step up this year, because if they don't, yeah, it might be a little rough. Like, but you need those like EQ, MVS, Lazard, one of those guys to step up. And then also on the defensive line, because we have nobody besides Kenny Clark. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's a matter of just putting a lot of faith in who they already drafted. But yeah, I mean, so to get to the ultimate point and why Packers fans were flooding me on Twitter, you picked the Packers to go 8-8.
Yeah.
I love the confidence. Yeah, I did.
I did. All those reasons that you set out there.
Yeah. So you have the Vikings, the Saints, the Buccaneers, the Texans, the 49ers. I'll definitely agree on the 49ers. Colts, Eagles, and Bears. Okay. So in your video, you did point to the draft, right? And say, like, you didn't get too many guys that are going to help you right this second that's going to help you win this season.
Yes.
Right? So is there any give to any of these games where you could see a potential turnaround? Because you do have the Bears going 10-6.
Yeah.
Which may be...
It's fair. A 2-game improvement from last year.
Okay. So you think that the Packers are going to lose to the Colts?
Yes.
Why?
That's a Colts home game, right?
I believe it is, yes.
Yes. Again, I go back to what we talked about with Phillip Rivers, is that he is a good quarterback still, who is in a terrible situation. He's going to a play, and you got to remember too, like these picks were made with, there's going to be training camps, there's going to be preseason games, you're going to get opportunities. But at the same time, Phillip Rivers still has the familiarity with Frank Reich, who was his offensive coordinator in San Diego. So the terminology shouldn't be too different. He should be able to step in there and play. And I thought they were a talented team last year. And really it just came down to Jacoby Brissett, who suffered a knee injury. Jacoby Brissett was a borderline dark horse MVP in the early part of the season, because the Colts were playing so well. And that to me is the Colts team that I would expect if they were getting quality quarterback play, which I believe that Phillip Rivers is going to give them. And so, and listen, when you're looking at this, and this goes back, and I will use the Bears of last season as an example, is that you have a team that went 13-3 or 12-4 for the Bears 2 years ago. On paper, they lost Adrian Amos and replaced him with Clinton Dix. You have 21 starters returning. Things tend to unravel and they tend to go the other way. And you were just talking about this schedule.
Yeah.
And there's obviously they could sweep the Vikings. They might not lose that game to the Saints. We don't know how the situation with Drew Brees and his teammates, how that really is going to play out.
They just let him get sacked 52 times this year. They're like, oh, I missed that.
Oh my God, I can't believe I missed that block.
Oh,
that's
man.
so terrible. Malcolm Jenkins is like, forget this team. I don't care anymore. I'm going to go on CNN. There's thing. I felt that we've seen this in the NFL a lot, where these teams
to go from top to
perhaps overachieved a little bit. And I'm not saying that the Packers weren't good, because I thought, again, that they should have been a 12-win team. I thought they were going to make the playoffs last year. A lot of things still went in their favor.
Yes.
And you're coming off disheartening losses to the 49ers, where you're not close. You're not even in those games. It's not you know what? I don't know what is worse, whether you're the Saints who lose in the Minnesota Miracle and you're like, you know what, we're fired up, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Or you're the 49ers and you're like, how good are we? What's happening? And so I thought that those games kind of illustrated that while the Packers were good, you've got one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. It's very easy. It's a very fine line to go from we should win again. You can make the argument for a lot of these teams.
Sure.
I just felt that if there's one team that I think could be challenged this year, that perhaps because they didn't quite address some of their needs like I thought they should have, that they might take a step back. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to be 3-13, and I'm sure your fans would have liked that more because my history of picking teams that go 3-13, maybe that's what you want.
Sure.
But I just felt like this season they seem more, pardon the pun, middle of the pack.
So
yeah,
yeah, exactly. CSI Miami. Because you picked the Lions to go 3-13, which means they're obviously winning the division.
Damn it!
That's just.
Listen, I was spot on again. I don't want to go back to that Bengals pick where I was nearly perfect. I also had the Reds. Like, these predictions are tough, so I'm like, dude, you're still like, you have Matt. Like, what is, like, at least with the 49ers, there's like some, like, we improved on defense and Nick Bosa was amazing. Like, who is that player for you? Because if Okudah comes, let's say Okudah is like the best cornerback in the draft, he's just replacing Slay. Like, he's not, you're not adding to your team. Like, you need Okudah to be as good as Slay immediately to maintain your level of mediocrity. So don't come after me.
I'm thinking they're just hopefully, for their sake, that they're going to get a running back at this point. Be like, this is the one.
This is the guy.
This one will stay. Because,
DeAndre Swift is the guy.
He definitely is. I mean, Kerryon Johnson wasn't bad, but then he got hurt. But I feel like they just have gone through so many running backs. And it's just like Matthew Stafford's one of those guys. I think Matthew Stafford's a very underrated QB as well.
100%. 100%.
Because that guy, the abuse that man takes with no team around him, and he's like, I can still play real well, guys. Like, sometimes he's the only one on the team doing it.
And you talk about somebody who was playing at MVP levels last year.
Yeah. Before his injury. I think the Lions could do better. Here's the thing that we definitely agree upon with the predictions. You said this with the Bears, and I might give it to the Packers as well. The best time to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next year is going to be in those first 5 weeks. Because, especially with no training camp and things like that, you get in a groove later in the season. Sure, they had the number one run defense last year. That I think the Buccaneers could be very good. But I think if there's any time to try and take one from Brady, it's going to be in the beginning, which is why I can see the Bears doing it. But I think the Packers could potentially, because I think it's like week 5 or week 6 or something like that.
Yeah, they're starting to get into that window too. And if I'm trying to remember, I should have had this handy with me, how the Packers schedule just lays out kind of tough too. Because again, that's another one of those things too, is that you were coming off a season where you were not in the playoffs and the schedule was a little bit easier. And now you've got to play all of these good teams. And now that when the Buccaneers get thrown into the mix too, is like, that would have been a game you would have expected them to win if Jameis Winston was still the quarterback of that club. Now it's different. So it's like the schedule changes every year and these things happen.
No, I hear you. But put it this way, and this will be the final thing that we'll finish up with. As a Bears fan, right? You went out a few years ago, you got Khalil Mack, right? Yes. And, it's interesting how it's seen because that first season, Bears fans are like, oh my God, we won that trade 1,000,000%, what have you. After last season, because Akeem Hicks got injured, Khalil Mack didn't do as well. They're able to double him more, what have you. And Raiders fans are like, oh my God, we won that trade. And when I talk to Bears fans, they don't talk about wasting the potential of their QB. They talk about wasting the potential of their defense. That there's a finite window where we're going to have this elite defense. Are we wasting it with subpar QB play? And I find it so fascinating because it's literally the exact opposite for the Green Bay Packers. And Packers fans going, did we waste Aaron Rodgers with subpar defensive play? So I'm curious of kind of your stance on either the Bears, the Packers, or both, with those arguments.
Well, let's be realistic here. You can't sit here and trade the entire Bears defense to Green Bay. That wouldn't work out salary cap wise. It's too weird. But trading just one player, now that's a little bit easier. So if the Packers really cared about Aaron Rodgers, they would send him to the Bears and just say, you know what? Go out there.
It felt bad coming out of my mouth. I was like, I feel like this could turn really, really fast. And it did. It happened immediately. And you know what? That's my fault. That's on me.
I'm one of those obvious comics that's just going to take the obvious joke. And that's it. Yeah, that's okay. You're right. Send us Aaron Rodgers and we will take care of him for you. I'm sure we will forgive his transgressions. The funny thing it would be if it did grow contentious like it did with Brett Favre. The one team that Aaron Rodgers knows he would have to go to would be Chicago. And I'm sure Allen Robinson would be magnanimous and give him the number 12. And just let him go and do that.
Allen Robinson would be like, take whatever you want.
Take
want
12, like whatever. Like you can have my house. Like do whatever you need to do. But it is one of those things. And my dad would talk about this a lot too, is, the 80s Bears going to the 84 NFC Championship game and losing to the 49ers because they had Joe Montana and the Bears were starting Steve Fuller. So at least when we got blown out in the NFC Championship game, we didn't have our quarterback, but like you guys didn't have your quarterback. Wait, no, that's true. I mean, Rodgers was playing. But anyway.
Oh, man. You know what? I'm getting some audio interference. It's just like two doinks that just keep on that raging through. If we're going low-hanging fruit here,
listen.
I made it through like an hour without saying a word about the double doink.
That's fine.
My water's gone now.
I don't like Doug Peterson Matt Nagy's your friend. Why would you freeze this kicker? I hate that stupid rule. God.
You know what?
And you know what? And that, when you talk about like trajectory of quarterback, and this could go either way.
Sure.
Is that Mitch Trubisky, they win that game, they go, to me, and I will die on this hill, they would have gone to the Super. I'm not sure that they would have beaten the Patriots. They would have gone to the Super Bowl.
I think they would have Super Bowl.
They would have destroyed the Rams the following week. You go back, Matt Nagy he relied on Cody Parkey to make a 50-yard kick in Miami. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why do you think your kickers are so automatic? You're playing too much Madden or whatever it is. But that is a fear, and it's something that my dad lived through, of having to waste a great defense. I remember it as a little kid with the Urlacher defense and Lance Briggs and all those guys, and we went to a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman. And I know a lot of people will be like, you could have drafted Aaron Rodgers instead of Cedric Benson. Like, yeah, no kidding. We all know this.
Thank you so much.
You could have started Kyle Orton in that Super Bowl. Like Tony Dungy Tony Dungy and Peyton Manning wanted to lose that Super Bowl so bad. Tony Dungy with the I'm going to kick it to Devin Hester. Like, you're an idiot. Peyton Manning wanting to do whatever. Like Dominic Rhodes. I will say this about Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning never won a Super Bowl. He was on two teams that won Super Bowls.
Oof.
For sure. Didn't win one. So, and everybody's like, why do you hate Peyton Manning so much? I'm like, do you not remember that he beat my team in the Super Bowl?
Listen, I'm telling you, that Super Bowl with the Broncos, they dragged his lifeless corpse to that Super Bowl. And they weakened Manning's. That's it.
Oh, that's it.
That's it. That's it. Show's over. We did it. We did it. Because that was it. Literally, they could have propped that son of a bitch in sunglasses and a recliner behind center, and they would have done just as well.
100%.
And by the way, we also do agree, too. Jay Cutler is a great quarterback. I think he's one of the greatest Packers quarterbacks to ever exist.
All right.
So do you think right now that you're wasting,
100%.
100%?
100%.
Interesting. I don't know where I stand on it, because I feel like a successful season for me is you make the playoffs, and that's it. Because if you make the playoffs, it doesn't matter. Literally, the entire regular season doesn't matter because you have a shot. And I feel like the Packers have been so consistent for so long of making the playoffs that could we have done things differently? 1,000,000%. But I mean, there's no guarantee that would have worked. There's no guarantee that we would have brought in a free agent and he would have been successful. So I think at this point, it's just, you talked about how the Packers draft, and I think that while it can be very infuriating for fans, they don't complain 5 years down the line when we're still in playoff contention, and
could be the alternative.
Yeah, it could be.
Like, my dad is still pissed about starting Flutie in 86 and things like that. Like, that is Bears. That's the life of a Bears fan.
It just runs deep. Listen,
why didn't we start Harbaugh? Like, I can't answer.
I don't know that. I don't know. Listen, we're not Lions fans. It could always be worse. And at least there's some hardware in the trophy case.
Yes.
That's it. That's all we can say.
You don't have to wear your Portsmouth Spartans shirt or anything like that to be like, look at us.
We did it. We did it, guys, at one time. Remember we made the playoffs at one time? But Adam, it has been phenomenal having you on the show.
Thank you so much.
I greatly appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully, we can bump up those numbers to 3% positivity. I'm not optimistic.
Yeah, I hope so. No.
Absolutely not. But please tell the people where they can find you, where they can direct the death
anger.
threats to. Yeah. Where all of that can go.
Yeah, I mute so many people on Twitter that it's probably not even worth it. Go hit me up on Instagram at Adam Rank NFL. That's where you get them. And that's where it hurts the most. Just if there's a photo of my kids, like leave that alone. And I don't have to tell the fan bases of 31 teams that, but there's a fan base in Tennessee that might not have gotten the memo yet.
God.
So listen, I'm a joke. I get it. But yeah, just hit me up on Instagram and like that. And hopefully soon we will have the definitive word if the Adam Rank podcast will be returning.
Oh,
so we're working through some things and working on some sponsors for the relaunch or whatever. And there's always hoops. There's always red tape. But thank you so much for having me. I'm glad that we were able to do this. You are a delight. This was fun. And you're now my favorite Packers fan. Don't tell Nagler, but you're now my favorite Packers fan.
A big shout out and thank you to Mr. Adam Rank for coming on the show and giving me some of his time. Not bad for a Bears fan. So go and check him out. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at TomGrossiComedy on all social media. See down below. Check out Patcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy. We'll be streaming tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. I will see you there for the live Q&A. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack, go.